Central banks are continuing to buy gold. So is there a crisis coming that is spooking governments around the world? Joining us today, Rory Hall, publisher of the Daily Coin. Rory, so good to have you on. I've been following your work for quite some time. So I'm happy to speak to you today.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that you do. You have a great array of guests, and I'm very honored to be on with you today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rory, and excited to cover a lot of ground with you here today. Let's start with the news coming out of Serbia. They've joined the ranks of central banks acquiring gold. They added 9 tons of gold to their reserves in October. Serbian president saying that the country needs to increase gold reserves to fortify against the looming economic crisis. So what is the magnitude, in your opinion, of this crisis that is spooking central governments around the world here?
Well, I think that some of what we're seeing is the news coming from the Fed and the repo that's been occurring for the past few weeks. I think that has a lot of people really on edge. That combined with is there a trade war, not a trade war? Mm-hmm. So you've got a wide variety of just economic issues, not to mention all the geopolitical issues as well.
And Rory, if we even look at a longer term trend, central banks have really evolved from net sellers of gold over the last 30 years to net buyers. Yep. Mining legend Pierre Lassonde explained to me, a few months back that this is because central banks know their current monetary system will fail and the dollar will collapse. Do you agree with this thinking?
I do, actually. I think that all of the central banks, if you look at the central banks and they're buying or they're acquiring of all the gold, I mean, they're not acquiring all this gold to make souvenirs or trinkets. And gold was moved to a tier 1 asset last year. So there's something going on. I mean, you've got all of these nations that are getting back into the gold market, like Serbia, for example. And not only the important part about Serbia is that they went from 21 tons up to 30 tons. And they said that in 2020, they're going to go to 50 tons for, like you pointed out, for the fact that in their words was to create more of a safety net for themselves. So, I mean, they're the ones that are saying it, not me.
Yeah. And outside of Serbia, Russia, China, Poland, all adding to their reserves. So the question, Rory, that I'm sure a lot of investors watching will say, well, how come this hasn't done much for the price of gold? Now, yes, gold did have a good summer, but why doesn't it keep rallying if all these central banks are buying and accumulating gold?
That's a great question, and I wish that I could answer it. I mean, we had a situation last week where there was 3.3 million ounces of gold that were dumped on the market, and it didn't. The price went way down. I mean, 3.3 million ounces is like 103 tons of gold, and I'm not sure where that came from or how it happened, but I know that it did happen. And when you have situations like that, then it kind of takes some of the wind out of the sails, if you will, and it's hard for gold to move up when you've got that type of selling pressure coming in, and I'm not sure why you would have that type of selling pressure in these times that with everything that we're talking about right now. So I'm not sure how to answer that question, Danielle. I wish I could.
Well, let's talk about other trends then that we've been seeing in the gold market outside of central bank buying. And you wrote a fantastic piece on this, that we're seeing more and more countries launch their own gold exchanges. Shanghai really having set the trend here. Is this something that you think we'll see continue in 2020? And is this the way for many countries to be saying, hey, we don't want to just deal with gold priced in US dollars anymore here?
Well, that's what it looks like. And since 2016, we've had 6 new gold platforms to come online. You've got 2 that are the BRICS gold, physical gold platform, and that's one in Beijing, one in Moscow. You've got the UAE, you've got India, looking at creating their own spot price in India, which is interesting. You've got Dubai. and Shanghai Gold Exchange. It looks like, Daniela, that they're going to play off of the Shanghai Gold Exchange. I may be wrong in that, but it's interesting that all of these new gold trading platforms have come online since 2016, when the Shanghai Gold Exchange started setting a global benchmark in yuan. So there's that change that's happened, and all these new markets have come online since then.
It's really interesting, Rory. What do you think would happen if the dollar is no longer the de facto trading currency for precious metals?
That's a great question. I think that it would. I think that we would see. I think we would. It would be a lot harder for someone to come in and put 3.3 million ounces on the downside in the gold market, because all of a sudden there would have to be 3.3 million ounces of physical gold brought to the market at that time. I mean, that's the way that the Shanghai Gold Exchange works, is that when you put in a buy or sell order, that contract is settled physically, and that determines the price. And that's why there's been a little bit of imbalance, if you will. At times the Shanghai Gold Exchange gets a little higher than what is coming from the COMEX and the CME and the LBMA. So you get I think that it would would change dramatically, because it would become more of a physical market.
Absolutely.
Like I said, all of these new markets are all physical. They're not paper or digital. So that's a big difference.
Could be a huge game changer, Rory. Finally, if I had to ask you to have a feeling of how you think gold might start 2020 and what kind of year it might be for the metal, what does your gut tell you?
Well, my gut and the research that I've done,
and more importantly,
both tell me that 2020 is going to be a better year than 2019, and for both gold and silver, which I follow both very closely, and I love both. I think that they are wonderful parts of that people should have in their portfolio. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not offering financial advice, but I think that it should be part of everyone's portfolio. And I think that 2020 is going to be a really great year for both of the metals.
All right, Rory Hall, publisher of the Daily Coin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniela.
No, it was a real pleasure, and thank you for watching. We will have much more for you on Kitco.com.